everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm responding to an email that was sent to me by Bob D. This was back on February 11th. So just to give you an idea how far behind I am with emails, and I'm trying to get caught up. So if you've sent me an email since that time, there's a couple that I may have gotten to because they were a little bit more time sensitive, but I assure you, I am continuing my march toward your email and I will get there. So he saw this on another LDS YouTube channel. Someone had made use of this chart right here. This is from Noema. I guess that's how you pronounce it, Noema. And this is based on the 2020 census. And this is for the United States. Okay. And so I've done many videos about generations and matching them up with statements from general authorities. And, there's always some people that are like, well, yeah, but these are like man-made generations. And you're right, but the different prophets and apostles that are speaking, okay, they're speaking to, yeah, maybe it's not very specifically defined, but he is talking to a general group. So we've had a couple comments. Here, let me blow this up. We've had a couple quotes from Ezra Taft Benson talking to these guys right here, Generation X. And I'm not going to say that it applies to the entire generation, but it was basically this group. With President Nelson, back when he was Elder Nelson, he did specifically talk about the millennials. He specifically specified the millennials, saying that the name millennial is the perfect name for them. And in so many words, he essentially said that they're going to live into the millennium. And it was very thinly veiled. Okay. It was very interesting. And then with this generation here, Generation Z, there's so much talk right now about the rising generation and how special they are and so on and so forth. Now, I don't know, maybe some people get jealous, and we do still have, okay, so these are the numbers right here, okay? So these are the numbers, and this is it back in 2020. So for example, 12-year-olds in the United States in 2020, there were 4.2 million of them. 28-year-old millennials in 2020, there in the United States, there were 4.8 million. Okay, so this is how many there were in 2020. So from this generation, the greatest generation, you can see that their numbers are dwindling because back then, I guess from 92 and older, that was the greatest generation, and not a whole lot of people make it really to their 90s. So this makes sense that these numbers would be all the way down here. Right here we have the silent generation in this light gray, and then the baby boomers are right here. Now, I want to go over a couple really interesting things. But first, let me just tell you my point of view. My point of view, in my opinion, is that the second coming will happen most likely within the next 5 to 10 years. That's kind of the range that I'm looking at. I'm not going to be surprised that much if it's longer. I'm also not going to be surprised if it's sooner. Okay? So in my view, I think pretty much most of these people here, including some from the greatest generation, will be around to see the second coming. That's my own view. Now, what am I basing that off of? Well, multiple things, namely my entire channel, but one specific thing. Okay, I've done a video on this before. This was a book by Joseph Fielding Smith, and he said something kind of interesting in this. Let me just read this whole paragraph. Some now living may, now he's not saying that they will for sure, But he says, some now living may see second coming. And this is April 5th, 1936, okay? The day of the coming of the Lord is near. I do not know when. He says here, I do not know when. I am not looking, however, upon the coming of the Son of Man, as I looked once upon the day when men would speak from city to city and throughout the land without the aid of wires, and would be heard, as something that may come in some far distant time, because I sincerely believe, okay, now here it is, because I sincerely believe it will come in the very day when some of us who are here today, April 5th, 1936, will be living upon the face of the earth. That day is close at hand. Okay, so back in 1936, he's saying that the day is close at hand, and he was guessing. He said he sincerely believed that there would be some in that very day that would live to see the second coming. So you can take the route where you say, oh, this was just his guess. He was just, that was his own opinion. You guys, President Nelson, okay, I've covered this a couple times on the channel. President Nelson said that when a prophet of God says something, he doesn't put a question mark behind it. He puts an exclamation mark. Okay, so in other words, in another instance, he's quoted as having said he never asked himself when is a prophet of God speaking as a prophet and when is he not. And I think that we would do well to do the same. Now, this prophet, he is saying, I do not know when and may see, okay, but his belief, and I would tend to think that his beliefs are maybe a little bit more authoritative in nature, since he's a prophet. Maybe certain things have been revealed to him that would lead him to believe this belief. Okay, so I think we need to look at it that way. We shouldn't hang our testimony on it. Okay, we shouldn't have this as like a foundation of our beliefs, but it's coming from a prophet. Let's just put an exclamation mark behind it, see if it happens, and just remember that he says, I do not know when. But take this with the fact that he's a prophet, and maybe he is a little bit more well informed than many of us. So let's go back here. Okay, so I went here and I calculated it, and basically in 2020, it was the I already forgot. It was the 86-year-olds. It was the 86-year-olds that were born at that time in that year, 1936. So in the year 2020, if you were 86 years old, you were probably born in 1936. Okay. So if Joseph Fielding Smith's feeling and sincere belief is true, that means that someone born this year or in the years prior over here, the earlier part of the silent generation or any of the greatest generation, would be around to see the second coming. Now, I wanted to know, what are the numbers? If we add this up, if we add it up starting with the 86-year-olds and then going back, how many were there in 2020 according to the U.S. Census? So I used my favorite tool, Google Spreadsheets or Google Sheets, and I created a spreadsheet. Okay, so let's look at this column right here. Okay, I did it as of 2020, and then, roughly this year they would be 2 years older. So that generation, the 86 years old, those that are still around right now, they're about 88 years old. Okay, and then over here, I put how many there were as of 2020, and then I added all these up, and in 2020, there were about 5.7 million people that would fit this belief. that Joseph Fielding Smith had. Okay, so and of course this number has changed over the last couple of years. I don't know how much. Let's say I don't know. Let's say like 4 million. Let's say 3 million. Let's just be conservative. Let's say that there's only 3 million left. Well, this belief, this could still happen. It very well still could happen. Now, there's this really neat website, 3story.com. They put together this thing here where it has all the apostles of this dispensation and how old they lived to be when they were called, so on and so forth. So at the very top of the list, it's interesting because within the next month or two, President Nelson is going to move into the number 2 spot for the oldest apostle of all time. Right now, the person that holds that record is David B. Haight with 98 years. President Nelson, he's right here. Okay. He was called to be an apostle on the 7th of April, 1984. He was 59 years old. And he is 97 years and 7 months old. So that's where we're at with him right now. So it's interesting. We'll need to keep an eye on this. Okay, he seems to me like he's I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but kind of like he kind of stands out when you look at all the prophets. Of course, all the prophets are important. They're special. They're called of God. But I feel like he kind of stands out. That's just my opinion, and it's interesting that he's living this long. It'll be interesting to see if he goes, if he takes the number 1 spot as far as the longest living apostle of all time. So he was born. That's LeGrand Richards. He was born in 1924, so that would put him in the greatest generation. Right? Yeah, 1916 to 1928. So, yeah, he's in the greatest generation. It'd be interesting if he lived to see the second coming, and if he fulfilled this belief that Joseph Fielding Smith had. That'd be very interesting. Okay, so here you have it. These are now down here. There's like a pie chart, and this kind of tells you in 2020 how many there were percentage-wise of the U.S. population. So Generation Z, a little bit over a quarter. The Millennials, a quarter of the population. Generation X, a fifth, and then Baby Boomers, about a fifth, a little bit over. And then you have up here the silent and the greatest generation, with about 8% between the two of them. So I find it interesting. I really do. I've had some comments from people saying, oh, every generation's been told that they're, special, or they're going to see the second coming. And I don't think that's true. I don't. If you're of that belief, then show me. I'm not from Missouri, but Missouri's the show me state, but show me. I can show you, and I have already done that through videos, them talking to Generation X, the Millennials, and the current Generation Z. And then we have this one from President Smith talking to roughly these people over here. Okay, but what about before that? Okay, can you show me documentation before this point that they were being told that they were the generation that's going to see the second coming? I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe it's out there. If you can find it, send it to me, and I'll put it in a video. But I think just from what I've been able to see so far, I really do think that starting with the greatest generation, silent generation, all these following generations, can reasonably expect to see the second coming. And the language has become more and more explicit. Let's take a look again at the phrase tracker, because I did a video on the phrase the rising generation. Let me see where that's at really quick. There it is. The rising generation. Let me actually, just so we can see it a little bit easier, let me hide these columns. Let me hide the ones after it. Okay. I've looked up a lot of different words and terms. Hide. Okay, now let's zoom in. Okay, here's the phrase rising generation. And you can see, well, let's first zoom out actually. Let's go to 50%. Okay, you can probably barely see that if you're on your phone. So I better zoom back in. Okay, so starting down here in the 40s, well, let's just do a count. Screw it. Let's do a count like we do on the other ones. So in the 40s, we got 3. 3 times that the phrase rising generation was used. 3 times. In the 50s, we got 4 times. Okay, 4 times. In the 60s, 3 times. 70s, okay, now there's a little bit of an uptick here in the 70s. 8 times. 8 times for the 70s. How many times in the 80s? 3 times. 3 times in the 80s. What about the 90s? In the 90s, we got 9 times. Okay, 9 times. What about the 2000s? For the 2000s, 14 times. Okay, now it's starting to kind of pick up. It's not until the 2000s that it kind of gets some life and starts to pick up. All right, let's look at the 2010s. The 2010s, 35 times. Wow, 35 times. Compare that to any other decade before that time. It blows them all away. And then here in the 20s, we got 7 times already, just in 2020 and 2021. Okay, so it's kind of clear. It's kind of clear that the rising generation, which is this right here, Generation Z, and I suppose Alpha as well, because I think that's the next one after Z. Let's see, Z goes to 2020. Yeah, and so I think the current the ones that are being born right now, I think that they're Generation Alpha. So anyway, the point is that they've really started talking about the rising generation right here with Generation Z. So I think that this is the group of people. These are the generations. Probably a few from the greatest generation. Probably just like a handful. I don't know. More from the silent generation. More from the boomers. And then after that, everyone that follows. I think that we are looking at the group that's probably going to see the second coming. That's what I think. I'm basing that off of all these different quotes. It just seems to make sense. I mean, for heaven's sake, we are now literally in a new millennium, even though it may not be the prophetic millennium where Christ is here and the 1,000 years have started. We are very close to that time. So it kind of only makes sense, I think, that most of these people will be around to see it happen. So, yeah. Oh, I should have explained on this graphic right here. If it's in blue, that they're still living. If it's in gray, they're deceased. So, Russell M. Nelson leading the charge. I honestly think if I were to guess, I kind of get the feeling that he'll be the prophet of the second coming. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it was President Oaks. We've talked about his name. We've talked about their professions. President Nelson, he's the heart surgeon, and therefore he's really working on creating Zion, creating a Zion people. There's a lot of Zion talk right now, avoiding contention. And then they're literally talking about creating a society like the city of Enoch. President Eyring talked to the sisters a few conferences back about that, how they're going to be the ones that create that society. So, the Lord likes to work with, parables, metaphors, things like that. So having a heart surgeon working on Zion, and Zion is the pure in heart. It's like he's working on having our hearts be pure. So if he passes away, it would kind of make sense, because next up we have Dallin H. Oaks, and he's the judge, right? When this happens, it's essentially it is a judgment day. It's not the judgment day, but it is a judgment day for those that are wicked, those that are not moving on into the millennium. And there's going to be a completely different, well, I would imagine anyway, a completely different political structure in the millennium. Well, for one, Christ is going to be the king of the entire earth. There's not going to be any more nations, or at least not as we know it. We're all going to be under Christ. So it would kind of make sense that maybe President Oaks would be the one that would be there to usher in the millennium with Christ. I don't know, but those are just some thoughts that I've had. I've talked about it before. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'll put all these links in the description below, including my tracker here if you want to check it out. It's read only, but you can look at everything that I've done so far, including this newest tab where I have the silent and the greatest generation and their numbers. Okay. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did anything come to mind? What's your opinion about this? Do you think that this is a pretty good assessment, or do you think it's just way off? Let me know. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, and make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.